Yeah, welcome everybody. Welcome.
We're going to take a minute to give everybody a chance to join.
Hi, Marianne.
Hey, how are you?
Doing well. How are you?
Good.
Let's say thank you for kind of orchestrating this.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm kind of always on the lookout for things that might help our parents. So listened in at the beginning of the year. It takes a while to get things moving through a school district, as I'm sure you guys are aware. So really? Huh.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, but I'm really excited. I hope it's, a real benefit to our families.
I can virtually, as close to guaranteeing this, I can virtually guarantee it will be.
Yeah. Well, given everything with FAFSA and all the questions my seniors are having, I think this will just be great.
Yeah, this will hopefully calm a lot of nerves.
Yeah.
And all that. And I mean, I see we still have some parents coming in. So as parents come in, actually, parents, if you're here listening, I kind of want to just do a quick question for y'all. We're going to be talking about your kids soon enough here, but let's talk about you all. Tell me, put in the chat. I'd like to hear, like, where'd you go to college? What? I'm curious if anybody went to schools that I went to or worked at, or schools that are my enemy. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, put it. I'd love to hear where you're all at, where you went. Oh, some good. Yeah. Okay. Oh, I see one of my alma maters and I see one of my enemies. Oh, there we go. Let's see. And everyone's going to find out which one is which for me real soon. This is good, though. Look at that.
Yeah, awesome.
Oh, I just saw a couple. I'm seeing some that I have some high school seniors right now that are committing to. So this is really good. This is exciting. Okay. Whoa. Let's pause here. Michael, I'm calling out Michael Matt. Are you a Cyclone to the bone? That's my undergrad alma mater. I'll say I was born and raised in Iowa.
Oh, there you go. You got it. Absolutely.
Oh man. Oh man. Another Iowa State. Yeah.
Wow.
Man.
Yeah, you're supposed to tear your shirt off and show the Iowa State underneath.
Oh, that's that diploma there.
Oh,
yeah.
That one, okay.
And, yeah. Trust me, you don't want to see if I throw my shirt off. Sorry.
Never mind.
It's not that kind of presentation tonight.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. But anyways, all right, man. I'm excited for this group. I love this group. Marianne, you have a great group.
Yeah, we sure do.
Marianne, is there anything you wanted to intro? Is there anything you want to tell families? Anything that they should know? Before Michael and I talk talk crazy?
Do your thing. Yeah, just, hey parents, thank you so much for joining in. We are really excited to be partnering with College Aid Pro. The LoSal Ed Foundation is funding this on our behalf. So all these services are free to you. And this is our kickoff webinar. So thanks for being here. Share the news with other parents. Let them know about this resource. And I'm assuming JP and Michael will also talk a little bit about like the online services that they have available to them. You guys can create free accounts and it's a lot of good stuff there. So just thanks for being here. And I hope it's the beginning of a great partnership. I feel fairly certain it is. And just particularly for my junior parents, this is the first of what will be 5 webinars, if I have that correct. So it's taking you all the way through to like this time next year where you're finishing up and maybe you are trying to figure out how to read a financial aid award letter or compare them between schools, because sometimes that can be confusing, or maybe even put in an appeal for more aid. So just know this is not the only time you'll be hearing, but just our first kickoff. And then I'm going to mute and take myself off video and let these guys take it away. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Marianne.
Thank you, Marianne.
And somebody said, I'm curious, One more question for the parents here. Let's talk about your kids real quick. I'm curious. Is everyone? Tell me the class. Are we class of 2025 parents, or are we class of 2026? I just got to gauge where we're at. Okay, all right. Oh, we got some 2027s. You're starting early. This is good. Good planning is the key. Time is the asset we cannot regain. So okay, love this. All right, pouring in. Okay. All right. Good stuff. Thank you. Michael, you want to give some housekeeping rules and kind of kick this off?
Yeah, absolutely. So good evening, everyone. My name's Michael Korch. I'm actually up in Seattle. I'm a left coast guy as well. And I've got 3 kids. One's 22 that lives north of me, Seattle here. And then I have twin girls that are 19 that are sophomores in college right now. One is at Western Washington University up in Bellingham near the Canadian border, and her twin is at the University of Portland. So kind of have the state school and the smaller kind of private liberal arts school. My background, I was born and raised in Seattle. I worked in the software industry actually for 32 years. Got my undergraduate degree at the University of Puget Sound in Tacoma, and got my MBA from the University of Washington. And so I basically was a product manager and a director of marketing for a bunch of 5 or 6 different startups. I worked at Tableau. I worked at a bunch of big companies. As the time was drawing near that I was going to have 3 in college at the same time, I knew I was going to be eating rice and beans for a while. But beyond that, I really, that's kind of when my family found College Aid Pro and started to use, just to get some context, because it had changed so much, a million years ago when I was in school. So beyond just the cost, but just how do you get in, and the admissions and financial aid forms and all that good stuff that you guys are just starting to think about and consider now. So we're kindred spirits. I might be just a year or 2 ahead of you guys, but I've been working in this field now for about a year. It's been awesome, and you were in great hands tonight. I think that we can hopefully relieve a little bit of maybe stress or anxiety and start to shine a light on your path a little bit, make it a little clearer for you. As far as housekeeping tonight, you guys did an awesome job jumping into the webinar chat. We're going to transition now and we invite you to ask as many questions as you want or can. We'll do our best to answer them. Please use the Q&A tool, and we will be, as we tag team through the presentation, we'll be watching that for your questions and doing our best to answer those. So I'll turn it over to you, Jake.
Thank you, Michael. So I'm JP. Since I mentioned, got a couple Cyclone alumni in this group here. Born and raised in Iowa, and if you got Google handy, born in the ice cream capital of the world. So, but anyway, after I graduated Iowa State, I moved to Los Angeles, and I started working at USC. And I did 18 years at USC, got my master's there. But I was a former director of financial aid. And can you believe that this face was the face and voice of USC's financial aid office for a number of years. So anyway, like 25 years ago, I was one of the co-creators of the California Cash for College program. It's built to this day statewide by the California Student Aid Commission. I've received letters of recognition from the city of LA and USD just over the years for all my efforts when it comes to helping families with this financial aid process, especially. And that's really what I've been doing is for now 20 plus years is, helping students kind of find their direction, figure out why they're going to college, and then helping them, find those right schools. And ultimately in the end, getting through college with, without bearing mom and dad and them with an unpayable amount of debt. So that's been my job. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight. So I'm going to share the presentation here so y'all can follow along. So tonight is, it's about financial aid, kind of a financial aid 101, if you will. Let's just embrace the college class terms right now, 101. So, but if you know, this is a kind of a new relationship with you guys. So just a quick background about College Aid Pro is a great organization based out of Boston, really, but they're really about this mission of trying to end the student loan crisis. That by empowering you guys to be smarter shoppers. And if you've ever read the book, like, you know, Who Gets In and Why, or, you know, the list of buyers and sellers colleges, this will make a little bit of sense. But really, we want you to be a smarter shopper, and we're going to show you how to do that with the free software that you have access to, and just give you you know, that a good explanation of how financial aid and the part that financial aid fits in this big ecosystem, if you will. You've already met Michael and me, and if you haven't already set up your MyCap account, or you don't have that, if you want, here's the QR code. And what I will do is, let me put in the chat. Let me find the link. Let me put in the chat here. Let me label this free account to MyCap. Here we go. So here's the landing page where you can use to set up your free account. You get access to the premium account. So you get all the bells and whistles here. So very, very kind of this partnership here with the Education Foundation. So again, just pull back for a second and understand where we're at, kind of like on this journey. So I like to say there's roughly 4,000 colleges in America, and even more if you count, you know, community colleges. And you're on this path to try to find like a list of what I call right fit schools. And that's what your child will be admitting to, you know, applying to, and hopefully get admitted to those right fit schools. And so I kind of think of it as like this funnel system where you narrow down these college choices by academic fit first, and that's what your school counselors are helping with. Then you're going to narrow it down based upon financial fit, what fits your budget, and then you hand that list of schools to your children. They say, hey, these are the schools I want to go based upon my emotional fit, the I want this, I want that, I want this. And that's all good, because we know it was an academic fit. We know it was a financial fit. So what we're talking about tonight is, how does financial aid, how does that fit, or how does that work with this financial fit? How do we make financial aid, or use financial aid to make schools fit our budget? I mean, I want to pick on USC. Our price tag is well over $90,000 this year. So how do we get a price tag like that to fit our financial budget? So that's what, again, a financial aid is going to be about. So let's just get into it. What is financial aid? And in the end, it's a way to discount the price of college. You have to understand, colleges artificially inflate their sticker price, and then they use financial aid to recruit students. It doesn't cost $60,000 a year to teach your child and put them in a dorm room. It doesn't cost that much. So if the school uses financial aid, let's pretend it's only cost $20,000. Even if their sticker price is 20 or 60, and they say, hey, we're going to give you financial aid, and you can come here for the low price of $40,000 a year. Hey, you're looking at that going, that's a pretty great deal. They're still making a ton of money. You paid less in sticker price, but they still made a profit. But that's kind of how we're financially. It falls in the middle of, like, what is their sticker price? What is the actual cost to educate them? And how do we negotiate? How do we get that as low as possible? So there's going to be 3 buckets of money that we're talking about, though, when we discuss financial aid. That first bucket of money is going to be grant money. And that's going to be awarded based upon what we call a financial need. And we're going to be filling out financial aid forms, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But this is free money. We like free money. The second bucket is scholarships, and that's going to be awarded based upon some sort of merit. Could be, the students some sort of, their talent. Maybe it's academic talent, maybe it's performance talent like scholarships, or I'm sorry, like football or basketball, or maybe it's in music, but some sort of talent, if you will. Again, that's free money. We love free money. The third bucket is technically financial aid. I don't necessarily love it, but I'll take it if I have to. And that's going to be the loans and work study. Again, not free money. That's loans are something we have to pay back. So in big, broad brushstrokes, when we talk about financial aid, these are the three buckets, but I'm really mostly interested on the free money. So grants and scholarships. How do we get as much of that to help to bring the cost of school down? Now, I often get asked, like, well, where do we get this financial aid? Where's it coming from? Well, in, again, broad brushstrokes, about 4 sources. I'd say roughly 45% of financial aid is going to come from the federal government. About 35% comes from the school itself. About 9% comes from the state, and about 11%, the last 11% comes from private resources. Now, we all here live in California, and California offers a very robust grant program, 7 of them, in fact. And I would say the 2 most popular ones I see are the Cal Grant and then the middle class scholarship. Those are probably the 2 most common ones I see. But again, we really have 7 different grant programs here in California. We don't have a loan program. I'm okay with that because I'd rather get more grant money. In the end, I'm going to just, before trying to go on all the details, I'm just going to recommend that you visit the California Student Aid Commission's website for more information about these kinds of grant programs. Essentially, your child's going to be asked to create an account with the state portal called Web Grants for Students. And again, very easy to find that information, but these are the kind of grant programs that are going to come from the state of California. Now, when we are talking about financial aid, there's going to be what I call this fundamental formula to financial aid. This is going to be, for the most part, this formula is going to be what dictates how much college will cost. And so it's a very important formula to understand. And at face value, this might seem like a very simple algebra equation here. You start with the school sticker price. What's the cost of attendance, tuition, room and board, miscellaneous fees, all that stuff. You're going to subtract from it the student aid index. Now, most of you parents that went to college, probably the same time I did, or maybe younger than me, we called it EFC, the estimated family contribution. It's just been renamed back to the student aid index, meaning this is what we called it in the 90s, was student aid index. So we're just going retro, and but this formula works basically the same. So student aid index, that's going to be determined when you fill out these financial aid forms. And FAFSA, if we remember those, but Michael will talk more about that. But we fill out these financial aid forms to determine your student aid index, and we subtract that from the school's cost of attendance. And that tells us how much you need for financial aid. So just a very generic example is that the price tag of a school is $60,000. You fill out a FAFSA and maybe other financial aid forms, and they say, hey, your SAI, your student contribution, is $40,000. That means you need $20,000. Okay, and it's the school's job to go to the Fed, to the state, and from them and all those sources, and find you the money to meet your need. Okay, so that's in a nutshell how this works. Again, face value, very simple formula. I will say it is a lot more complex. This is a college course, a master's level course, and it takes more than a semester to teach, because that student aid index in of itself, if I were to print it out, the simplified FAFSA, it got longer. It's now 49 pages long, and the rules that go behind it are hundreds and hundreds of pages long. It's like a textbook. So, and that's just on the student aid index calculation. So this is behind the scenes a lot more complicated than what it might seem like, but I don't want to get it into the weeds too much. But big picture, the sticker price or cost of attendance minus your student aid index equals your need for aid. This is going to be what determines the cost for school. So I think the thing we really are mostly focused on is that student aid index calculation. So let's talk about what goes into it. And I'll say in generic terms, what goes into determining that SAI is assets and income. So when we talk about assets, you want to know that that not everything that we might have as an asset should be reported on financial aid forms. For example, your retirement accounts, like a 401k, an IRA, anything in a cash value life insurance policy. Like, we don't report that. We're not supposed to. It's not going to get factored into the SAI calculation. But anything else outside of a retirement account, such as what you have in your checking account, savings account, a CD, a brokerage account, any of that kind of stuff, that would be an asset. When it comes to real estate, the answer is going to be, it depends. Are we talking about your primary home? On a FAFSA, you don't include your primary home. If we're doing a school that has another form called a CSS profile, you would report that. If you have a second home, maybe you bought a home for your in-laws or a grandparent at one point, and now you're renting it out, something like that, all financial aid forms are going to ask about a secondary residence. So assets that really kind of want to know the classification. Another example of this, the FAFSA changed rules a little bit last year. And now if you have 529 saved for your child's education, in the past, that was considered a student asset. It's been rebranded as a parent asset. And that's a good thing, because parent assets are assessed at a lower rate than students' assets are. But just to complicate it further, if it's on a FAFSA, at least on the FAFSA purpose, if it's your student, the student who's applying on the FAFSA, if that 529 is for them, you don't actually have to report it. You just report the other ones. So you get a little, there's some subtle rules in that. So you just want to pay attention to. Best advice I always give everyone when they're filling this stuff out is read the small print, read the little pop-ups to get further explanations. But I will tell you, 3 out of 4 families do make some sort of mistake on this stuff. And so you want to be just really, really cautious on that. And again, we'll be having more presentations down the road that talk about like how to fill out the FAFSA and how to fill out the CSS profile. We'll try to help keep you on the tracks, if you will. But that's one of the things that are going to go, it gets calculated into your SAI, are the assets. When it comes to income, it's going to be used what we call prior. So for the parents here who said your child's class of 2025, you're going to be using your 2023 tax return information. If you're a class of 2026, they'll be using 24 tax return information. So it's essentially always like 2 years behind. And it's going to be looking at the most important factor really is going to be line 11 of your tax return, the AGI. What's the adjusted gross income? Okay. They do not ask about your expenses for the most part. So what they essentially do, and this is not exactly precise, but it's close enough that I think this will make sense. Based upon the size of the family and the state you live in, whatever the poverty guidelines are, that's essentially how much of your income they protect and say, okay, that's for your expenses, and everything beyond that is going to be available to calculate that FAI, and it's done on a sliding scale range up to 49%. So that's kind of the income protection they provide you. Just think about it as in terms of what's poverty guidelines for the size of my family here in California. That's probably roughly how much of your income is protected. Everything else is up for grabs. When it comes to the students, if your child's working, has any income, they have an allowance all the way up to $9,400, well, $9,410 to be precise, but $9,400 that they can earn, and it won't affect that SAI calculation. So again, big broad brushstrokes, what's going into that SAI calculation, assets and income. And Michael?
Yeah.
I will turn it over to you if that's all right.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks, JP. So merit-based aid. So if you have a student with a strong academic record in high school, they have a great GPA, they've got really good grades in challenging college prep courses, maybe they have strong standardized test scores, then why not target the schools that provide big discounts for great academic performance by awarding merit-based scholarships? And some schools are just more generous and our job is really to know kind of which schools reward that great talent profile and the great grades that your student has acquired. We as parents love those scholarships because typically most scholarships are awarded for all 4 years. So as long as the student attends school full time and maintains some acceptable cumulative GPA, and it can vary a little bit based on the school. They set that. So a 3.0 is typical at a lot of schools. So that's an important distinction from the need-based aid that JP's been talking about, because for financial aid, need-based aid, we have to reapply every year through the FAFSA or the CSS profile for the small set of schools that use that secondary app. So important to understand that scholarships are managed typically through the school's Office of Admissions, not through the Office of Financial Aid, where those need-based aid awards are calculated. The need-based awards, which you have to apply for every year, it's a phenomenal thing. You have to maintain that full term status. And let's transition for a moment over into MyCap, and let's see if I can share that. And you guys can take a look over my shoulder, and we'll look at a demonstration account that I've got here. Can you see that, JP? Is that coming up all right? Okay, cool. So this is Beth, my imaginary daughter, and we live in Southern Cal, and we're looking at a few different schools. The place to start, if you haven't already set up your MyCap account, is up in the top there. I'll make this a little bigger, is to go into your profile, and it's going to ask some basic information about your kiddo and your family. Where are you located? Some details about what year you're graduating. Are you leaning towards a major? Are there siblings? GPA, and a little bit about the financial information. And this really all ties into those financial aid applications that we were talking about, the FAFSA and CSS profile. And then it goes into the parent or guardian information, earnings, income, AGI that JP was referring to, taxes paid, do you own a house or not? Is there equity in the house, and so forth. So when we fill out that information, what's brilliant about MyCap is that all of the schools in the system, and there's well over 2,000 schools in the system here, 4-year schools, is that the sticker price will adjust based on the attributes of the school, where you're located, what your financial profile and your student's academic profile are. Here we can see a few schools in California and how the price may or may not change for this particular family. So you can see for the first two examples, Fullerton and Irvine, the sticker price and the adjusted 1-year net cost are the same. Now, if I would have set up this account saying that my zip code was in the Seattle area and look at these same schools, they would be very, very different. I would be getting the out-of-state pricing for that. And that's part of all the important good stuff that's inside of MyCap, is the adjustments based on location and so forth. Some numbers I just want to point out at the top that are real important to consider. The Federal Student Aid Index. So this is the number that comes out of filling out the FAFSA form. So it says that the expectation for this family is that they're going to be able to and will be paying just under $30,000 a year for a year of education. Now, for the institutional SEI, that's the student aid index that comes with a secondary application, the CSS profile, that a small number of, typically it's the elite liberal arts schools, it's the Ivies, it's kind of the Stanfords, the Harvards, the Yales, and the Princetons of the world. They have this secondary application, and you see it's a little different. We present it as a range because some schools will actually consider your home equity as if it were a liquid asset. And if you're fortunate enough to be living in your home for a long time and it has gone up in value, some schools will actually take a look at that and go, wow, that is some of your net worth, and we anticipate that some of that's going to go towards the cost of education. And that's in my estimation, a little bit crazy, but that's the way some schools look at it. But again, we just want you to be aware of that, and all these rules are built into the product. What's another wonderful thing is if we click into USC and look at the information about, we're presented information about admissions. So kind of the range of the kiddos that are accepted into the school, what's their GPA and their test scores? Are they test optional? And so forth. What's their acceptance rate? For financial aid, we're going to see what forms do they require. Well, they use the institutional SAI, so they're going to require CSS profile for the school. Here's a great example of USC. If you have that gap and you have the need for some financial aid, USC is exceptionally generous. They're one of those schools that on that generosity scale, they're very generous. We also have a whole variety of merit scholarships available, and we have all the scholarships for all the schools in here. You could take a look at the attributes of those different scholarships, and actually these are all hyperlinked, so you can even click through and learn some of the, oh, that's not a good example of that. Let's read 404. Look at an example of, some of these scholarships and what are some of the additional details. So lots of good information about each of the schools as you're kind of further doing that research. So I won't go into, a little farther down the line as you're looking at schools you put in your budget. Well, also, you can start to take a look at the affordability. Are you going to have to take out loans and such, and what might the impact be there? So really great information that kind of supports your family through this journey. Okay. Let's see, I guess, can you start up that presentation for us again? Thank you. Awesome. All right. Well, great. That's good about grants and scholarships, but what if I'm, what if our makeup of our family is such that we don't really qualify for a lot of grants? We're fortunate enough to kind of have a higher income and asset profile. What are some of the other ways that we could try to discount that cost of college? Well, we call them value schools. Why do schools charge $100,000 or almost $100,000 a year? Because people are willing to pay it. And you know what? The good news is that there are many, many high quality institutions across the country that are more affordable. And here's just some of a few examples of the kind of the lower end of the tuition range. The New York schools, BYU in Utah has a cost of attendance of about $30,000 a year. California families are super fortunate to have access to some wonderful transfer programs like Transfer Pathways, TAG, Pathways Plus, where 2 years at a community college and then through their connections with the UC schools, they are guaranteed, if they finish those kind of the minimum and the required courses, get good acceptable grades in those, they can transfer right into that four-year institution. That cuts off 2 years of that cost out of that more expensive four-year education. A great thing. We have something similar in Seattle called the Seattle Promise that does much of the same thing. So wonderful programs that are available. Another way to get more ROI or return on kind of your education, ROE, and I have a daughter that does this in our public school up here at Western Washington University, is she was accepted into the honors program there. And so it takes what is a big school and makes it smaller. Typically, professors often have to apply to get into that program to actually be a presenting faculty for that. So the cream rises to the top. You oftentimes get some really great professors that they may not otherwise have access to until much later in their college career. You kind of build a cohort, which is really important, especially in your first year or so, when you're looking to find your people and you want to land on your feet and start to build some of those relationships in an honors program. It can be really fabulous to kind of connect with people like yourself that are excited about learning, diverse, talk about a lot of different things, the news of the day, have these wide-ranging discussions. It can be really, really a fantastic program. So, all right, next slide, please. So let's talk about applying for financial aid. Let me bring something up here. Okay, so we've talked a little bit now about there's two very important financial aid forms, and one's called the FAFSA, that's for federal financial aid, and the second is that CSS profile, which is for about 200 schools, and you can use MyCap. You can also search each of the schools' websites. They would talk about what the required financial aid forms are. Really important point is that deadlines really matter here. It's not something you want to be late for. It's not like being fashionably late is rewarded here. For many schools, it's kind of first come, first serve with financial aid. So our guidance is usually, the date that the financial aid forms are available plus 30 days. We really try to focus early on to get those forms submitted. This year has been very, very difficult. If you don't have a 2024 child, consider yourself very lucky, because it's been kind of a train wreck this year, and that the forum, as you've probably heard about, has had a lot of hiccups this year and a lot of challenges and data being incorrect and such. So quite a bit of that has been resolved, and I know JP and my fingers and eyes and legs are crossed, hoping that by October, when the next season begins for the 2025 class, that those problems have been resolved. So essentially every school in the country requires the FAFSA. The mostly smaller private schools that also require the CSS profile, that is administered through the College Board. Your student probably most likely has a login already to that, because they administer the SAT, the PSAT, advanced placement courses and such. As the process continue, you definitely want to stay on top of school communication. So I know this is sometimes an area that can cause some challenge initially, even as you're submitting admissions forms and such. I know that my daughters were fairly allergic to email. I think that some kids of this age group, they're a lot more comfortable working in social media and texting one another and such, but schools use the old-fashioned email communication. Some of them really don't even do that very well, and they're really going to rely on that portal account that gets assigned to your student when they submit their admissions. It's going to move through the journey, and eventually, if they get accepted and they decide to move forward, then it'll transition into helping them get started with school and what they need to do next and paying their fees and such. So I actually set up so to speak, an appointment with my daughters twice a week to okay, let's go through your Gmail and see if there's anything. We don't want to miss anything. We don't want to miss any, the school needs another document or they have a question about something. And so make sure you kind of stay on top of that process. All right, next slide, please. All right, thank you. So the FAFSA form, typically the FAFSA becomes available on October 1st every year. We advise every family, again, to kind of submit the FAFSA every year. If I were talking to Bill Gates's family, I'd say, fill out the FAFSA, please, every year. So even if you think you might be in an income and asset situation where you may not be receiving federal aid, there's a bunch of other really important derivative programs and things that come from submitting the FAFSA. One of those being a bunch of schools will not consider you for merit-based aid, which is that kiddos, the talent profile and the grades, yeah, we're not eligible for need, we won't fill out the FAFSA. If they don't see that FAFSA on file, essentially that's sending the school a signal that says, we really don't need any aid, we're all good. So they don't consider you for scholarship either, which you don't find that written anywhere. It's not a surprise you want to experience. So please fill out the FAFSA every year. You're also eligible, or I should say your student is also eligible for up to $27,000 over 4 years. That's the federal direct student loan. It used to be called the Stafford loan back in the day. It's literally the best student loan on the planet. Even in my case, with my kiddos, I made my daughters both take that out. It's only in their names. There's no cosigner opportunity. And when you pay it off on time. It does wonderful things to their credit score because it's in their name. They could graduate at 22. You may want to help pay that off, or maybe it's all theirs. That's kind of some of the discussions you'll want to be starting to have right now. And having that, we call the college money talk, and really kind of helping each other to understand where you're coming from, what the expectations are. We have that talk in our family, and my daughters were taking out that $27,000 to pay back, and we'll be helping them with that, but we're not going to be doing all of it. And it's entirely possible that when they graduate at 22 or 23, they're going to have potentially have a 700 credit score. So when they try to take out that first little loan for that first used car, or they need to do a credit pull for that first apartment, that's going to really help their position, against the competition. So we know it's not October yet, so there's not a FAFSA for those of you on today's presentation to go fill out, but you can take the first step if you haven't already, which is to create your federal student aid ID, your FSA ID. You go to studentaid.gov. Both a student and a custodial parent, they each must have their own account. So that's something you can get started on. It takes a few days for once you submit that to runs through Social Security. So those things touches a few hands and a few computer systems before you get that approved. So make sure you do that in advance and not kind of rush when the time comes, if you will. Okay, next slide, please. All right. So let's talk a little bit about some FAFSA tips here. And I know I saw a few questions earlier in the presentation about this. So 2 household families, divorced families, separated families. The good news is that for the FAFSA application, we're only going to be looking at, or I should say the government's really going to only be looking at one individual, one parent or guardian from that family. And there could potentially be kind of a strategic opportunity as well, because many many families that we work with, oftentimes the divorced mom and dad will have kind of a 50-50, even an informal kind of guidance that they want to, share in that raising of the child. Well, because as you know now, the federal aid documents look at income and assets. If you have one parent that has a lower income and assets versus the other, and there's kind of a 50-50 pay that's gone on to support the child, well, have the parent that has the lower income and asset spend a little bit more money in that in this year, so to speak, such that they can be the custodial parent, because the rules now are the parent that spends the most, essentially invests in the care and feeding of the child over the last 12 months, from the FAFSA submission back 12 months, who invested more dollars to support the child. That's the person that's going to have their income and assets examined. So I've seen it where there is a equitable 50-50, but one parent is a surgeon making $400K and another parent is making, 50 or 75K. Like, that's the person that's obviously going to get a lot more financial aid. So you might be able to use it for your strategic advantage. Number 2 is really near and dear to me, having twins. This is something that used to be really nice. There used to be like a 35 to 40% discount on having multiples overlapping in school at the same time. Didn't have to be twins. It might be, kids that are close in age. For FAFSA schools, that discount starting 2024 has gone away. And folks that had kids, in school like me right now, we're not grandfathered in. It's kind of ripping the Band-Aid off, and it's this coming year is going to be a lot more expensive. So that's going to be part of my appeal to the school that we have kids at. Now the CSS profile, that small set of schools that use that secondary application, so far, it seems that they're honoring that discount. I don't know if that's going to continue. We don't know that, but fingers crossed. That may be, if you've got multiple kids or a larger family, that might help to, make the math work out for your family. We talk and do a lot of consulting, number 3 there, with parents that are business owners. Both the FAFSA and the CSS profile, you have to report if you are self-employed, you have your own business. You all have to report the value of your business. And we work with a lot of families. The approach we say is, is to provide the lowest kind of defensible value. This is one of those places that JP kind of referred to, that 3 out of 4 families kind of make boo-boos on their financial. This is kind of one of these weird moments in your life. You actually want to look as poor as possible, so to speak, and not kind of say, oh, I've got a business and it's worth this, and give it a bigger number than it really deserves to be. So that's an area that you may want to, that might be an area that we might be able to help you. Fortunately for lower income families, there's multiple billions of dollars that Congress has approved that last year and the coming year that are increasing the number of families that are receiving Pell Grants, federal grants. The numbers are increasing, as well as the dollar amounts are increasing. So it's great that those families get additional opportunity to attend college. JP referred to number 5 in the 529 balance, only providing the 529 balance for the kiddo that you're filling out the FAFSA for. Unfortunately, number 6, it's one of those head scratchers in the past. When you made contributions to your qualified retirement plans, like a 401k or 403b, there was some, so to speak, penalty for that, like those, as if those dollars were still available that you could have spent on college. Now, fortunately, the laws have changed. You're not penalized for actually saving for retirement. So please save for retirement if you can. That's you can borrow for college, you can't borrow for retirement, as the infamous saying goes. All right, let's talk briefly about the CSS profile. I've mentioned it a few times. It's we said earlier, it's about 200 mostly private schools. It's an and, you got to fill out FAFSA and CSS profile. There's even a few schools. I was working with a family today that's looking at the University of Pennsylvania, UPenn. They even have a third, their own financial aid form. So there's 3 at that particular school. It's like the gifts that keep on giving. You get really good at it. We might be able to hire you if you do enough of these, I'm guessing. But so big change or challenge about that. The new FAFSA that went live this year, it's actually much shorter than it used to be. It was over 100 questions in the past. It's somewhere in the 30 or 35 questions now, because it connects directly to the IRS and pulls over some of your 1040 information, so you don't have to type it in, which is really a good thing, leads to fewer mistakes. Now, the CSS profile, I like to refer to as kind of grabbing you by the ankles and shaking you and seeing what quarters fall out. They're a little more pervasive. It's much longer. It's like, give yourself at least an hour, if not more, to fill that one out. It'll ask about your primary residence, your mortgage, the amount of equity you have. We talked a little bit about that. For divorced or separated families, both biological parents will separately and privately submit CSS profile application. You will have a custodial parent that submitted the FAFSA, and that person's going to submit the CSS profile with their child. And the non-custodial parent will submit a non-custodial CSS profile app. Neither parent sees the financial information from one another, so they manage those data sets separately. It's joined together then, and the university will see those applications and be able to make decisions about financial aid based on all of the records.
can I make a comment
Yes,
real quick on
please.
that, Michael?
Please,
So
yeah.
just I'm gonna make a kind of a joke, everyone, but it's also real. It's serious. In the case of divorce, situations, what if one of the parents or both parents remarry? If you remarry, that new spouse is also going to be asked to provide their information. So if you're the custodial parent and you remarry, that new spouse's information is going to be on a FAFSA and the CSS profile. What if the non-custodial parent remarries? Well, on a FAFSA, non-custodial parent's really not in the picture, but on a CSS profile, a school that uses a CSS profile, that non-custodial parent's spouse, their information is going to be collected as well. So there are scenarios. I'm working with a few families right now where I have 4 parents' income going into the SAI. And it's one of those where I'm like, y'all should have not got married to get remarried until they graduated college. So just that's the joke. But be aware of that, okay? And it doesn't matter if you have agreements about the new spouse won't contribute. It doesn't matter. If you want your child to get any financial aid, that information has to be provided.
Thanks, JP. Yeah, that's a good highlight or a low light, depending upon your composition of your family. Absolutely true. In my cap, when you go scroll down below where I was showing you those tiles for each of those different schools that we were looking at, we have great line by line video tutorials of both the FAFSA and the CSS profile. We update it every year because sometimes there's little tweaks that happen, through each year. It doesn't cost any additional money. It's also available on our YouTube channel. We've got a lot of great on-demand content there. So please take a look at those before you jump into just filling out the apps. And again, we've got other wonderful presentations we'll be making through this academic year coming up together. So there'll be other places to learn of good stuff coming as well. So, okay, JP, next slide, please. All right, let's do a quick kind of intro. If you're not familiar with applying to school, starting to build your college list, next step is one that you may haven't even yet considered, which is like when to apply, because there are kind of these different rounds that you can consider. So what are some of the pros or cons or kind of the rules about that? So admissions counselors really do their best, to make the application and the admissions process as simple as possible, obviously, but, they know that the decision in particular can be very complex and confusing. So starting at the left here, so early decision, you may have heard that before. So students that apply early decision, they're going to submit their application before the regular deadline. And they're also going to be informed of their admissions decision soon after. Typically it could be as early as January, February is when they oftentimes will hear it. It's very unique about early decision. It's a binding decision, which means any student who applies and is admitted to a school through the early decision is expected to enroll. Early decision applications typically require some type of signed form that indicates this intention to enroll upon admission. If a student is admitted early decision, he or she is expected to withdraw all their other applications and kind of submit upon receiving the offer. So in our opinion, it's critical to research in advance. It's really got to be your student's number one choice. You're as parents, if you're going to be contributing, the finances, like you really need to know what the likely financial aid and merit scholarship results are going to be for your student at that school. Like you both have to be 100% clear. Part of the challenge is that when a student applies, and they're only applying, you can only apply to one school early decision, is that you will not have received offers back from other schools, let alone how much their financial aid packages, what those are going to look like. So that's part of the challenge that you can't really kind of compare. And is something more affordable? Is it going to fit our budget more? So you really need to know upfront about that, be aware of that commitment. Now, if the financial aid offer comes back, you still have the opportunity to appeal that decision. And the school is, if it comes back and you do the negotiating or the appealing, as we call it, and the package is one that is really going to cause financial damage to your family, you can be released from the commitment, but you don't want to have to go through that mess to kind of deal with that situation, especially if you don't know what you're kind of getting yourself into. So just be very aware of that situation. So it's part of our challenge right now in our guidance to families that we're seeing admissions data over the last few years that's showing more and more schools are admitting larger percentages of their freshman class through the early decision round. So you really have to kind of weigh the risks and the opportunity of like, it's really the number one school. We're fired up about that. We want to get in there and walking through that. And we talk to lots of families and help them kind of through that process. So let's move to the middle now. So early action. Okay, it's like early decision, but the difference, early action, you're submitting your application before the regular decision round. You're going to be informed, soon thereafter. Now, these offers are not binding. So students that are who are not kind of committed to their early action school, they typically have until traditionally around May 1 to either accept or decline an offer for admission. It gives you that additional time as a family to compare financial aid awards, to appeal the awards, to make final decisions. Now, some students that are not admitted early action may be deferred to the regular decision deadline, though policies vary between schools. So finally, then, we come to, the regular decision round. So still a majority of students for most of the schools apply through a regular decision. They can apply to as many schools regular decision as you would like. The application submission deadlines vary between schools. It's a pretty common question I get is the regular decision deadline the same for all the schools? No, there's not a consistency. There's usually a range of when it happens, but it's one of those things, again, that's like every school kind of does it a little bit differently. The regular decision deadlines typically are in the early January. Offer of admission are sent out could be late March or even early April. They typically have until May 1 to accept or decline the offers. Each student, you submit a matriculation fee or a fee waiver to the institution you want to be admitted to, and you move forward with that. So that's another part of this journey. You want to learn about the application deadlines for all the schools that you're applying to. If it's unclear, through their website, reach out to the school's admissions office, ask for clarification. We can help too if you want to kind of discuss pros and cons of those strategies of those different rounds as well. Okay, JP. All right, appealing. So this is kind of looking down the road. This is coming attractions, but we'll just touch on it briefly. So you've been admitted, and you receive your financial aid award letter. You may have, perhaps some families sometimes have extenuating circumstances. Maybe a parent has lost a job or something has changed in your financial position since that kind of prior year tax form, and that certainly can happen. You have the opportunity to engage with the school and essentially appeal for kind of adjustments or review and adjustments to your financial aid package. So don't think of it necessarily as negotiating. It's kind of really having a conversation. They're going to be deciding, whether to give more money if you burn bridges or you don't want to do that. They're not going to rescind an acceptance decision, but they don't have to provide an additional dollar to you as well. I know I've have engaged with tons of families this year. We're kind of in this period of appeals right now. And as some of the bullets say on the slide, And I know JP has read a bajillion of these and created a bajillion of these in his career. I often hear him talk about, don't just make it sound like the ATM transaction that's like, we love your school. We could totally see, our son being there. Can you give us $10,000 more? You got to bring the color and the background to your story. I worked with a wonderful family 2 weeks ago. The daughter wants to go into journalism. She was accepted to Cornell, and she was hoping for a better, different package. She reflected back briefly in her appeal letter that we crafted about a conversation she had with the editor of the Cornell school newspaper, which was kind of arranged as part of her tour. She was so excited, her head almost exploded. He's like, to meet someone that was like, and to be able to talk about that, and articulate how she was so passionate about, like, that's the thing that the people in the financial aid office, like, you want to do good on that family if you can and help them. And that's the people that they remember. So be persistent, demonstrate that interest. The student, from the merit side, they really need to lead the charge. We're happy to help you with that process. If you're doing work on your own, so to speak, take a look at our website. We have a lot of good content through our blog and such that can give you a little more context as well. Okay, we did it. So next steps, don't just set this aside. We all get so busy, and your families, you're so awesome for, like, you're looking ahead. As part of this process, when you have the luxury of a little bit more time, it's going to give you a lot more options. I so dislike having to support a family and talking to a family when it's May and they didn't understand some of the stuff, and now they're looking for options, and there's not a lot we can do at this point. Like, the train has left the station. So keep this on the front burner. Do that research, get clarity on kind of the next steps in the process. We are happy to partner with you and support you in this journey. JP, I'm sure you have some words of guidance, kind of next steps for families as well.
Yeah, I just put in the chat, very appropriate timing. A few days ago, an article from the New York Times, written by a former senior advisor to the Department of Ed, and in a nutshell, there's a part where he talks about how colleges literally pay consultants, pay professionals to figure out how to lure you and your child to come into their school and how to get the most money out of you. And the analogy he says is parents and students are playing checkers, but this is a game of chess. And so I really look at as this College Aid Pro software, again, through the gracious donation, you guys have the premium access. You have all the bells and whistles. This tool can be what levels the playing field for you. And I put it in the chat, that article, so take a look at it. And I would just say also, and I put in the chat, is if you guys have questions, if you're like, just like, hey, can you explain that real quick? Or I think like my situation's too complex or whatever, don't hesitate. Book a meeting, book a call with Michael or me. We're happy to help. Well, if it's something that we can do inside the College Aid Pro software, great. If it's something that needs a little more personal attention, fine. We somehow, some way, we're here to help. I still can remember the faces of the students I helped in financial aid 25 years ago, where I'd be at in the admissions ballroom, like, rah, 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 come here. And then they'd come to my office and I'd be like, don't come here. Like, it's too expensive. And I've stayed in touch with these families, the students, 20 years later, I've stayed in touch with, thanks to, Facebook and LinkedIn and such. I stay in touch with these kids. they're not kids now, but and they'll say like, yeah, those 4 years were the best 4 years of my life. The 15 years afterwards have been hell, just trying to pay back the loans. I've been, couldn't afford rent, couldn't do this because my student loan was too high. I wish I would have been, I'll use the word, smarter shopper. So utilize the tools that are provided to you. This is something that I very passionately believe in, and I wish this stuff existed 25 years ago. Maybe we could avoid this debt crisis that we're all in as a nation. So please utilize the resources, use the College Aid Pro account, book a meeting with us if you have questions, if you want to see can we help you with anything additional, please do that. Yeah, Michael, anything else?
I think that's it. Thank you everyone for boy, a Monday night too. Thank you so much for making time in your evening to join us tonight. We hope that we covered, we kind of peanut butter spread this presentation. There's so much, this is the iceberg. There's like so much down below, but I think you have a little bit more context of some of what the levers are now that we could work on to get a better discount as far as income and assets and merit and such. So thank you so much for your attention and your time and your questions, oodles of questions.
Yeah,
And
great,
we look
great
forward.
stuff. And yeah, as Michael said, like tip of the iceberg. Again, we have more presentations we're going to be doing throughout the year for you guys, appropriately timed as we get through stuff. This is really truly an introduction. Now, if anybody wants to do that, like take a semester course with me on the SAI calculation, I'm happy to do it. I would nerd out over it, but please no. Like if you understand the broad brushstrokes, and then you'll have a better sense of what you're seeing in the College Aid Pro account. I also just want to say thank you, Marianne. Thank you for helping put this together. Really, really appreciate it. And sorry, Michael, I'll see you at Welch Ave. Christmas time is when I go back to Ames. Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Right. Have a great night.